Escape from Giant's Crown. Chapter 2, Byron's Town. The metal clanging yanked Oliff back to consciousness with a gasp. Bartol licked his cheek until Oliff pushed him away. His heart raced, and he couldn't remember if he'd been dreaming or for how long he'd been asleep. He jumped up so fast that he slammed into a hanging lamp. Rubbing his head, he pieced together that he had been lying on some kind of a narrow wooden table. He groaned and rubbed his bleary eyes. Beside him, in the dimly lit room, stood a man in a long, slick black rubber overcoat. Several glass and metal contraptions hung around his head. The man poked and prodded at Mao, who lay flat on the table next to him. Oliff panicked. "The boy, is he—"
"Relax, Mr. Oliff,"
intoned the masked man as he continued to work with precision.
"I've given him something for the pain, but he's just taking a little nap."
He hovered over the boy, meticulously threading and suturing the giant wound in his shoulder. "How did you know my name?" The doctor did not turn away from his work, but gestured down toward Oliff's clothes.
"Why, it's written right there on your underpants."
"My Noticing that he was shirtless and bandaged, Oliff thought it best not to press the question. Though he had many questions, he sighed and scanned the rest of his surroundings. The room looked more like a butcher shop than a medical facility, aside from the light bulb hanging above him.
"Looks like the two of you have seen better days," the stranger said. "Should I be expecting another patient tonight as well?"
"Just what is that supposed to mean? What are you getting at?" Oliff scoffed. This man seemed to be a doctor, but he didn't like the implication of the purpose of their arrival. After so much isolation, it had been a long time since he'd experienced any kindness or generosity from strangers, so he couldn't help but assume the worst.
"Oh, nothing at all."
The stranger paused from his work for a moment and leaned in close to Oliff. When he lifted the large glass contraption from his eye, he revealed a face covered in scars. One of his eyeballs was missing, replaced with a small metal knob from which he could attach one of the many devices he used, presumably for surgeries and the like.
"We've all got wounds what need be healing round here, see?"
He groaned ominously.
"And we all have enemies, too."
"Easy, Wheezy," came a familiar voice.
"He's gonna give him nightmares, Doc."
Out of nowhere, the doorman, Dindal, abruptly poked his large nose up over the side of Oliff's bed and interjected.
"Come to look at them there peaches, have ya?"
Oliff's stomach grumbled. "Peaches?" he questioned.
Right, Dindal chuckled. "I knew you was new round these parts."
He twitched his nose and poked at Oliff's shoulder with his pointed finger.
"Haven't got any pins to speak of either, eh?"
"What's that?" Oliff replied. "Listen, friend, I don't know what you're on about." Dindal waddled and grunted as he slid his crate along the floor, climbed up, and peeked over the table to size up his guest's condition.
"Come on, then. Everyone who's anyone west of the forest come to see the peaches, eh?"
But this only seemed to confuse Oliff even more. He had no interest in peaches, or pins, or stone giants, or pint-sized doormen. He kept his focus on the doctor, who silently stitched Mao's wound. Dindal rubbed his hands together. Clearly he relished any opportunity to explain his status.
"Well, it's a good thing I's here to tell ya, and that you've paid the right penny."
He nodded and beamed a toothless grin.
"Let him rest, dear Dindal,"
the doctor said firmly, as if he were annoyed merely by the doorman's presence alone.
"He will be arriving shortly."
Just as Dindal was about to respond, the doctor turned, with an insistent gesture highlighting the 4 pins along his lapel, each shaped like a golden peach. The doorman stuttered, then mumbled to himself incoherently. With wild-eyed determination, he thrust his finger in the air to demand Oliff's attention.
"Pins!"
Dindal reiterated madly, as if about to spring into a song. But Oliff merely shrugged and turned away.
"If'n you can count, then I's got more than yous, eh?"
He proudly pointed to his own 3 shiny peach-shaped pins over his left lapel, and gave them a tap.
"Meaning, you's got to show me some respects and all that, till you's got pins of your own."
Oliff did not react, even as he watched him from the corner of his eye.
"What's the matter?"
Oliff shuffled. "Don't reckon we'll be needin' no pins. Just a bit of the doc's time, and we'll be on our way."
Right, says all.
Dindal chuckled as he pushed out his chest and patted his belly.
"Myself and the dog Wheezy here? Oh, he's just passing through as well."
Dindal guffawed until the good doctor gave his box a firm kick. nearly tumbling him to the floor. The pint-sized doorman straightened his hat and wrapped his tiny fingers around the table leg.
Just don't go and do nothing stupid, like get yourself banged up.
He looked around as if they were being watched.
Make no enemies round these parts, stranger. Ruffle the wrong feathers, and you might end up right in the crack.
The crack? Dindal merely waved his hands in front of his nose.
You don't want to know. Oh, noff!
What does that even mean? What's in the crack? Oliff looked to Dr. Wheezy, but he merely let out a long exhale.
It means you're in good hands, Mr. Oliff.
Dr. Wheezy finally said as he dropped the last tool onto the metal plate and pulled each of his rubber gloves off with a snap to emphasize his words.
Apologies for our doorkeep. I'm afraid he takes his role here quite seriously. Oh, you'll have nothing to worry about on your brief stay here in Giant's Crown. So long as, he paused to choose his words carefully, well, let's just say, I hope that you've come to our fair city prepared.
Prepared? Oliff asked.
Why, with your wallet, to put it gently.
Oliff scavenged through his bag and his pockets, but the doctor simply shook his head.
Oh dear, I'm afraid it's not going to be quite enough. We can't even be certain of the extent of the infection. The wound is deep. The antibiotics alone would cost you at least 20 penny per week.
With that, the doctor began to pack up his tools.
Oh, good heavens, have you no heart, my good man?
Boomed a voice from the doorway.
The poor boy needs your assistance.
A large, rotund man strode into the room. Dindal and the doctor nervously straightened up.
Mayor Byron, sir,
the doctor exclaimed.
To what do we owe the pleasure of your company?
Oliff had never seen such a well-dressed person of influence, and was taken aback by the mayor's presence. The esteemed Mayor Byron was the type of person who seemed to take up much more space than everyone else in the room, and not just due to his physical size. Oliff recognized him immediately from his portraits hanging across the room, though he was a bit wider around the belly than his likeness. His suit was a distinctly high-class wine-toned ensemble, which Dindal rushed around constantly brushing to keep clear of any dust or wrinkling. The suit caught Oliff's eye. It seemed to change color as the light hit it from different angles. The mayor's white mustache stretched from ear to ear and curled up at each end under his wide nose. When he doffed his hat, his slickly combed white hair came to a point, creating a singular swoosh from the tip of his nose all the way to the back of his head. Dindal scrambled to catch the hat and gloves Byron discarded before they hit the ground.
Oh, do go easy on our new guests, good doctor,
Byron exclaimed.
You must dispense with the pleasantries and assist this rather large, burly, and intimidating gentleman with his child's medical needs.
Then, with a curious air, he said,
Tell me, Dr. Wheezy, what exactly is the condition of the boy?
The doctor leaned over the boy once more.
Quite unusual, I would say.
Unusual? Byron boomed, loud enough for folks outside the room to hear.
Why, how do you mean exactly?
Dr. Wheezy's eyebrows shot up.
I mean, he's not quite human. Not human, you say?
Byron swiveled to stare at Oliff and held his gaze for an uncomfortably long time. He continued to wiggle his eyebrows and cock his neck from left to right, as if he were waiting for Oliff to interject with some sort of explanation. Oliff crossed his arms. Just when it got so quiet that you could have heard a pin drop, Byron said,
Unusual. Highly unusual. But will he survive? I'm not quite sure that you understand, Mayor Byron, Dr. Wheezy explained. You see, the boy will require at least 6 weeks of medication, and the surgery alone will cost far more than this, he gestured to Oliff. Poor traveling gentleman has upon his person.
Byron pounded his cane upon the ground impatiently.
Get to the numbers, my good man. What'll it cost?
The doctor swapped out the device on his eye, and numbers began spinning across the lens.
At least 150 penny per week,
he mumbled after a moment, lacking any real conviction. It was almost as if he were looking for the number that Byron wanted him to say. At that, Byron gave the doctor a direct stare.
Oh dear, I mean tisk indeed. Oh, this won't do at all. He leaned over the table and looked back at Oliff. Will it? Well then, old chap. He leaned over excitedly and flung his arm around Oliff. It looks like you're going to need a job. What do you say, friend?
Oliff recoiled. You want me to work for you?
Well, nothing in this world is free, my boy. Except, well, maybe air, I suppose.
Byron stared at the ceiling as if contemplating how he could turn a profit from selling the air in Giant's Crown.
This is, of course, not the kind of thing I would normally do, you see. But I found that I have a soft spot for foreigners.
His tone went sad, and he heaved a heavy sigh.
You know, I just hate to see anyone suffer. Least of all the children. Oh, the children.
His lip trembled as if he held back tears. Oliff wondered where the audience was for this theatrical performance, him or the doctor.
Family. It really is everything, isn't it? So long as you don't mind getting your hands a little dirty.
Somewhere, a clock ticked. The moment was far too conspicuous. But looking at Mao, laying on that table, unconscious, covered in blood, and barely clinging to life, it did not matter. He would have let them rip out his lungs if that meant it would save his boy. He thought for a moment about what might come from accepting the mayor's offer, but decided that Mao's life was worth whatever the cost. Lodging, Oliff said. We'll need a place to stay until he recovers.
Naturally! Byron's eyes went wide and round. I've got just the place for you. It's very affordable.
Byron smiled and nodded at the doctor, who began to unravel his tools again. Byron extended his hand and spit into his palm before offering it to Oliff, who reluctantly accepted the gesture.
Impulsive! I love it! A man who's all business has no time to negotiate.
Byron leaned to whisper into the back of his hand to Dindal.
Foreigners are so quick to action and so naively trusting. Watch and learn.
He smiled at himself, quite impressed with his own assessment of the situation.
Excellent, yes, he continued aloud. I knew you were going to fit in here, my good man.
Byron snapped his fingers at Dindal, who darted up to the table beside Oliff, flicked the farmer's hat right off his head, and replaced it with a black bowler cap. Leaning over the injured child with a predatory glint in his eye, the mayor whispered,
After all, family is all that matters in this world.
Then he turned to Oliff.
Be ready to start in 3 hours, my good man.
Byron flung a coin-sized object at Oliff, grabbed his hat and gloves out of Dindal's arms, and glided through the door as if joining a dance with the good citizenry outside. What had Oliff just agreed to? He inspected the shiny coin-like pin in his hand. A token. It had a simple peach-shaped design and large letters along the top, which read, Dream Big.